Houston, home to beautiful parks and greenways, glittering architecture, inspiring university campuses, and stellar entertainment venues. These jewels are our assets, well-recognized points of pride. Just as parks, trails, and open spaces are assets that enhance the quality of life for a community, the public spaces along our streets and roadways are assets to be carefully cultivated. Scenic Houston sees the public right-of-way as the community's largest public space and believes street rights-of-way merit care and attention in the way they are planned and designed. These streetscapes are the connectors between neighborhoods, and in many cases, their appearance largely shapes the character of a community. Recognizing the potential of great streetscapes as a powerful tool to build community, drive economic development, and improve health and safety, and because Scenic Houston is dedicated to making the Houston region a more appealing place to live, work, and visit, Scenic Houston created the Streetscape Resource Guide. The Streetscape Resource Guide was developed as a practical, photo-rich companion to existing City of Houston streetscape regulations. The guide draws attention to very specific locations across our area where dynamic streetscapes have resulted from thoughtful planning and implementation. It illustrates that superior outcomes can result as easily as mediocre ones under the same set of public guidelines. With the advent of Metro's System Reimagining Project, the Bayou Greenways 2020, and implementation of the Houston Bike Plan, Scenic Houston has updated the Streetscape Resource Guide to reflect current community priorities. Organized and color-coded for ease of navigation, the Streetscape Resource Guide considers all elements of planning and design, pedestrian, travelway, and shared realms. Equipped with the Streetscape Resource Guide, Scenic Houston can work hand in hand with various communities to promote sufficient pedestrian walkways, handicap accessibility, good street and pedestrian lighting, landscaping, trees, pervious surfaces and bioswales that manage stormwater runoff, improved access to transit, and, where appropriate, bicycle-friendly roadways. Scenic Houston can do this through presentation and consultation with civic groups and neighborhood coalitions, direct advocacy with elected and appointed officials, convening stakeholders to speak with one voice, and depending on timing and opportunity, aggregating resources to move project concept to reality. Scenic Houston has a forward-looking vision. We want and see only the best for our community, and with our Streetscape Resource Guide in hand, we can drive lasting change.
I'm Heather Houston. I'm the new Executive Director at Scenic Houston. Welcome to the 22nd Annual Scenic Visionary Award. I'm joined this evening by Cook Kelsey, Scenic Houston Board Member and Chair of this fantastic event. Every year, this event is typically hosted at the Houston Country Club. But for the safety of our scenic friends, like many other events in Houston, we've decided to go virtual. And while we wish we were together, enjoying dinner, cocktails, and that delicious pecan ball, we're very hopeful that we can see you again in person next year.
For those of you joining us for the first time, each year Scenic Houston recognizes someone who is playing a vital role in improving Houston's appearance and image. This year, we are delighted to recognize our scenic visionary, John R. Breeding.
As president and CEO of the Uptown Houston District, John Breeding has set the standard for mixed-use urban spaces in the United States. With the vision and support of the boards that he serves, Mr. Breeding has turned Uptown Houston into one of the most economically viable and iconic destinations in the country.
We also have a special guest joining us, Alexander Garvin. Alex is a renowned urban planner and a professor at Yale University. He has written many books on urban planning, and he will join John and our Scenic Houston Board Chair, Marlene Gaffrick, for a fun conversation on the development of Post Oak Boulevard and the importance of our transit corridors.
We are also honored this evening to have a special tribute to Gerald D. Hines, Scenic Houston's 2006 Scenic Visionary. Mr. Hines embodied our mission to make Houston a more scenic place to live, work, and visit. Before we get started today, we'd like to thank a few important people. First and foremost, our board of directors, whose passion and dedication make Scenic Houston the great, impactful organization that it is today.
And thank you to all of you who supported our virtual event this evening. Because of you, we're able to continue to implement Scenic Houston's mission-driven initiatives to reshape our great city.
I could go on and on about what a great organization Scenic Houston is, but instead, let's watch a video that will demonstrate the importance of our organization. For the last 30 years, Scenic Houston has been champions of improving Houston's scenic character.
Our first major project was the improvements along Broadway Boulevard. We were able to partner with the city and a management district and create this beautiful boulevard leading out to the freeway.
Roadways are extremely important to us here in Houston, something that we use every day. So we want to make sure that we make our roads as attractive as possible. We also want to make sure that the pedestrian realm is pedestrian friendly. Scenic Houston's mission is to preserve and enhance the character of the public spaces here in Houston, and also to improve the quality of life in Houstonians by improving these public spaces. The Streetscape Resource Guide is a guideline to help you design and plan a better street for the future.
So when you think about what has been done here on Post Oak Boulevard, you think about the landscaping and you think about the sidewalks and the lighting.
Post Oak Boulevard has always been transforming. I became involved in the mid-1980s, and at that time we still had overhead electrical lines and wooden poles. We had no lighting along the street. We developed a plan back in 1986, and we have been implementing that plan ever since.
You see the beautiful trees that they have that are well trimmed and well groomed, and then they also have the beautiful wide sidewalks. Uptown has been a leader in promoting a pedestrian-friendly environment.
But we were unserved by transit, and it really was hurting us from an economic viability over the long term. Metro didn't have the financial resources to be expanding their system. And so our property owners and board of directors and major corporations in this area said, what can we do ourselves? And working with mayoral leadership, we proceeded to pursue this project.
The Silver Line, the dedicated bus lane or rapid transit that we have, it's something unique here in the city of Houston, and it's the first of its kind, and it's going to set a trend and a precedence for the future.
The first group I called was Scenic Houston. They are well respected in the community. They are the entity that brings us all together as we fight for making our city a better place to live. One of the things we've tried to do with Post Oak Boulevard is simply do something of the quality that would reflect properly on the buildings that are adjacent to it. Mr. Hines and the Hines Company not only revolutionized urban development in Houston, but they have set a standard worldwide.
Scenic Houston is always looking forward. We're always adapting to what the city needs. We just won a huge victory with the passing of the Airport Corridor District, which is going to ensure that our thoroughfares to and from the airport into downtown will look less cluttered, they'll be more maintained, the abandoned signs will be eliminated, and it will also make sure that Houston leaves a really great first impression to travelers.
EDGE stands for East Downtown Gateway Experience. It's a project that we are currently conducting in partnership with Edo Tours. The goal of that project is really just to give Peace Streets a facelift by adding landscaping improvements, hardscape and softscape, and making that corridor that enters downtown a lot more attractive than what it currently is.
Scenic Houston is an organization where you have the opportunity to work with board members who are very talented, have a common goal.
When you do have beautiful scenery in your neighborhoods, it makes a difference. And I hope what COVID-19 did for all of us is bring more awareness to how important beautiful scenery is to our shared experiences in our neighborhoods.
Come be part of Scenic Houston. Come support our efforts.
Your small or perhaps very large contribution of money, time, and personal interest in Scenic Houston is going to be effective. It multiplies you by 1,000.
As you can see, the work that Scenic Houston has done over the past 60 years has greatly impacted Houston's scenic character. Because of our education and advocacy work, there are 12,000 fewer billboards, 0 LED boards, 820 transformed areas of green space, 1 million more trees planted across Houston's highways, and more thoughtfully designed streetscapes throughout the city. We believe in clutter-free roads and highways, beautiful and accessible shared public spaces, and safe sidewalks and streets. We also believe that Houston should always make a good first impression, and that every citizen has the right to live in a scenic community.
I couldn't have said it myself better, Heather. Before we move on, I want to say a special thank you to Zadok Jewelers and Harvey Builders for letting us use their brand new building with that amazing view of Post Oak Boulevard for our video. Now we're in for a real treat. We're getting a rare opportunity to listen in to a conversation between John Breeding, Scenic Houston Board Chair Marlene Gaffrick, and acclaimed urban planner Alexander Garvin. We hope you enjoy.
So I want to thank you for just the wonderful introductions. And today I appreciate John and Alex spending time with us. And I want our conversation today just to be free-flowing. So you're going to find that I'm going to ask questions that are open-ended. And I want John and Alex just to talk with one another as if they're having a conversation. I am going to ask questions along the line that talks about the past, the present, and the future. So getting started, I would like for John and Alex to take us back to their first impressions of Post Oak Boulevard.
I think maybe Alex and I had sort of a similar time frame when we sort of began to focus on the Post Oak Boulevard in the uptown area. I graduated from, got out of graduate school in 1996, came to Houston.
I beat you.
1976.
I beat you. I was invited to Rice. I had never been to Houston in 1968. And I saw Post Oak Boulevard for the first time in 1968. I had a classmate from Yale who lived a few blocks away, Paul Kelly, who's no longer with us. And that was my first visit. And this huge long boulevard filled with traffic, very different from today.
When I first came to Houston, it's funny to look back on it now because when I came here in '76, I thought that Post Oak Boulevard was already like at its ultimate stage. It was beautiful and all the really great businesses and shopping and restaurants that were in the area, the office buildings. Uh, but it's amazing as we look back about really what condition all of that was in.
I think what's interesting is when you go back and look at Houston's history, we have developers that had the vision of what Houston could be, but then they stepped up and led by example. And I think Uptown is a perfect example of what our developers in Houston can do.
We've also been, I think, really been blessed with the way development has occurred. In the early visions for what Uptown would be, if you talk to the individual developers, there was going to be Transco 1, which is now Williams Tower, 62-story. There was Transco 1, Transco 2, Transco 3. Literally, I've seen drawings with Transco 6 on it. And the economy, I guess I would say the 80s happened. And then we have leaders that come into town and bring new visions of what an urban environment should be. And that was Giorgio Borlenghi who brought in doing high-rise residential living in this area. And so you bring that, and that has been really a strong growth point since the 1990s forward, maybe the greatest amount of value in the area. And so we began to have this opportunity of blending together the residential living in the area, office workers. We are the retail center of the region. And if you go beyond that, hotels and restaurants and all of that together really has created this kind of great urban mix that we're so excited and everyone strives for. And the books tell us that's what we should be working toward. And
John,
now we've reached the point.
You have something else. You hired somebody to design the street signs to make a distinctive environment. And while there are a few such arteries in the United States, there are not many. Tell us about whom you hired and what they did.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to that great board of directors and had the vision to reach out to people that they felt like they wanted to do something to help define our area in very simple ways. And what we find out that details really matter. We worked with Henry Beer out of Boulder, Colorado, now a firm that has been absorbed, but Communication Arts. And we work with SWA Landscape Architectures and Scott Slaney with Terrain and others. And really begin to say, what could we do to tie this together? So we did a very distinctive streetscape element, from the arches to the signs you talk about. I even point out, if you cross the street, our push buttons, the little pedestrian push button that you push to get the green light. And we care about what that looks like. And we did a very unique design on that. Our gateway sign rings that are at our major intersections. But you know what? We get more letters, people telling us how beautiful they think our flowers are than we do for how beautiful our street lights, our arches, and other things. But I think it's a combination. I think doing that lets people who visit here, there's a subtle message that we plan for you to be here, and we are really doing something to make your visit more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And so we had great designers. Again, Alex, I think you point that out well. We had great designers doing things that help differentiate this area.
So let's talk about it. You know, it was predominantly a major traffic artery, and it will still be a major traffic artery. But let's talk a little bit about how transit has really changed the whole look and feel of the boulevard and the other uses now, because we have this wonderful pedestrian realm out there, this great public space. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I think the most important thing that we did was creating a public pedestrian environment that attracts people to the boulevard. It is amazing. I live in the area and I can see what's happening at 8:30 in the evening or at 7:20 in the morning, and people are out on the street and they're walking their dogs, they're pushing their children, they're riding bicycles, they're riding skateboards, they are experiencing the environment. We also worked very hard to put street lighting in the area for pedestrians, not just for the streets. And you can literally walk through this area at night, and it's not that you see a pool of light ever so often. You simply walk through an environment that's illuminated. The trees, the ground plane, the people that you meet, and it makes it so much more enjoyable. There is no concern because you're in a very lit and controlled environment. And that's the most wonderful thing that we've already seen happen. From
Nobody would have believed it in 1968 that Post Oak Boulevard would be a pedestrian artery, that there would be wide sidewalks on either side and a central corridor. Houston was thought to be entirely for motor vehicles, not for pedestrians. And the planting and the design of the street has made a great deal of difference. The other thing is the developers who put things along the edges of it, including Gerald Hines. But without the Galleria, you would not have had anything. But it's not just the Galleria anymore. There's a whole succession of these places, including hotels, retail establishments, places of entertainment. This is turning into a major boulevard. And the only thing like it that I can think of will astonish you. It's the Champs-Élysées in Paris, which is a little bit wider. It's 235 feet wide, not quite, I mean, it's wider than you are, but it has some of the same characteristics. And I predict that within 20 years, all of those 1- and 2-story buildings on either side that are now shopping facilities are going to be high-rise buildings. And they're going to have retail on the ground floor, maybe on the second, but it's going to become something more akin to Michigan Avenue in Chicago, or Fifth Avenue in New York, or the Champs-Élysées in Paris. And the fact that you have the bus running down the middle that stops along the way is something quite significant, because it means that an office worker might decide that they're going for lunch at the Hilton Hotel. They walk out, cross into the median, get on the bus, and go to the Hilton. That's the kind of experience. The only other city I know that has done something like this is Denver. It's not nearly as broad, it's not nearly as ambitious, and it doesn't have quite the same collection of things, but it has free bus running up and down the pedestrianized street, and it's the only street in the United States that's similar in function.
Alex, you mentioned that you don't think that people in 1968 would have thought that Post Oak Boulevard could have been a great pedestrian environment. I don't know in 2015 or 2018, and I think they're beginning to realize it now. And look, I think that we should, I think we have to look to the future about these. In Houston, decisions have been made about the way things look based on how can we move automobiles. And I think Post Oak Boulevard really in the first and biggest way so far said that we are in a non-downtown environment. We're going to build generous sidewalks for pedestrians. We're going to put them in the shade for walking during the day. We're going to illuminate them at night to make them feel safe and comfortable. And then on top of that, we're still going to maintain the ability for the automobile to move around conveniently, but we brought transit in and for the first time. And I want to go back to individuals. It was my board of directors who said, when we were assessing when we would probably get transit, we realized at the time that Metro didn't have the financial resources to do it. And politically, we were probably fifth or sixth on the list. And I remember one of my board of directors saying, why don't we do it ourselves? Which was a pretty bold statement. I don't know if he understood the scale of doing it yourself. But really and truly, working with Metro, with the city of Houston, with incredible mayoral leadership, with Mayor Anise Parker and Mayor Sylvester Turner, we were actually able to use TERS funding, federal transit grants, to transform Post Oak Boulevard from an arterial street with 6 lanes of traffic, 3-foot sidewalks on either side, and literally almost 2,000 feet between traffic signals or where pedestrians could safely cross. There's an enormous transformation here on Post Oak Boulevard where that you safely, with a signal, can cross Post Oak Boulevard as a pedestrian. You can walk down a shaded sidewalk and you can get access to transit, while at the same time we maintain access for the automobile, and I think created a much more enjoyable environment. I want people to come out of a great restaurant, see a beautiful boulevard. I don't want them to come out of a restaurant and say, hey, look, there's a great transit system. I want them to be able to walk out and use it. It was the catalyst that allowed us to be able to redevelop, but it is a holistic environment that we were able to change. I'll just say one thing. We were very fortunate. Back in 1986, right after I had the opportunity to join the Uptown Houston District, we received a federal grant to do a major transportation plan. And in that plan that was published in 1986, we called for all the improvements, Marlene, that the TERS has been allowed to tackle, and a Post Oak Boulevard that looks largely how it is being realized with the rebuilding of Post Oak Boulevard with transit in the middle. My personal opinion is you build a great city. I think there's some greatness of the medical center, greatness of downtown, certainly greatness of uptown. And I don't necessarily even compare ourselves to those two areas because we're just so different. I do look internationally to see how people live in cities. And we are only beginning to get there. I had to fight for a 12-foot sidewalk. Barcelona thinks 22 feet is about appropriate. You can talk about Paris, you can talk about London, you can talk about Washington, D.C. And so I think we are a young city. We have been working to make it a better city. And I think we're beginning to see some of the fruit of that. I'm thinking about Buffalo Biopark. I'm thinking about Memorial Park. And I'm thinking about our future in Uptown, about how we connect to those things, that we not only are a great place to work, but we're a great place to live. If you live in the suburbs, I want you driving or taking transit into Uptown just to experience it. If you live in the area, I want you to be able to ride your bicycle within the area and into Memorial Park and down to Buffalo Biopark and connect to all of our greenways. Houston as a whole, and certainly Uptown we're focused on, but as a whole, the city is evolving, and some of the things that we've all been working for 30, 40, 50 years, we're beginning to see happen. So I think it's a great, wonderful time for the city. And I think it's a particularly great time for what we've been able to accomplish in the Uptown market.
I agree with you, but I also think that there's something very special about Houston. It's not only one of the largest cities in the United States, which most people forget. It is evolving into a major destination, not just shopping for people from South and Central America, not just for what is a growing art community, both visual arts and musical performances. It's becoming a major city. For my more than 50 years of teaching at Yale, I have taught a single class, which is my favorite, and I play 3 roles. I start out being a New Yorker who believes that zoning is the only way to plan cities. Then I become a Houstonian who announces that zoning is unconstitutional. And then I become a New Yorker who comments on what the other 2 said. And in each case, I have illustrations from each of the cities. Well, when I started doing this, I used to get a laugh because I began with fellow Americans, which was Lyndon Johnson. After 3 years, nobody knew who Lyndon Johnson was, and nobody believed any of this. Now, when I do it, people pay very careful attention because they understand we're talking about one of the largest cities in the world. It wasn't in 1967 when I began teaching.
Okay, we are out of time. I appreciate all of your comments today and discussion, and you made my job very easy as moderator. And you were both able to, have a good conversation. So I appreciate your time and thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
is a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Wow, that was a delightful conversation. It's hard to believe that Uptown used to be farmland and that under John's leadership, it's turned into one of the most iconic neighborhoods in the country. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. Cook, I do wish we had a pecan ball as we're wrapping up this program.
I totally agree.
Now on to the highlight of our evening, our awards presentation. We invited George Lancaster, Senior Vice President of Communication at Heinz, to present John Breeding with his award earlier today.
We are thrilled to recognize the late Gerald Hines in our presentation tonight. Mr. Hines not only transformed Uptown by building the Galleria and the beloved Williams Tower and Water Wall, but he was passionate about making Houston a more beautiful place to live, and truly he was the ultimate scenic hero.
Here to present the 2020 Scenic Visionary Award to John Breeding, Mr. George Lancaster.
Good evening, everyone. George Lancaster here, representing Heinz. And I want to thank you so much for continuing to support Scenic Houston. Even though we can't be together at dinner tonight, I feel like we all are together in spirit. I have the greatest job tonight. It's my pleasure to be presenting my friend John Breeding with Scenic Houston's 2020 Scenic Visionary Award. So previously, this award has been presented to some of the most influential scenic champions that Houston has ever seen. John will be joining a class of visionaries that includes Ed Wolf, Eleanor Tinsley, Mayor Bill White, and my late boss, Gerald Hines, who we lost this past August. Mr. Hines, like many of these influential leaders, left an indelible mark on Houston. His vision was to create remarkable, memorable spaces, and he knew that Houston's scenic character largely depends on its built environment and took every opportunity to design high-quality places that would enhance the city's scenic character. We could go on and on about Gerald Hines tonight, but we're celebrating another scenic visionary that's carrying forward his vision, John Breeding. I've had the pleasure of working with John since I moved to Houston to be the marketing director of the Galleria back in the 90s. And it's been quite a journey and been very fun to watch the progress he's made. I can't think of anyone more deserving than John Breeding. For more than 34 years, he's led efforts in planning, funding, management, and governance to turn Uptown into one of the most economically viable, iconic destinations in the country. Under his leadership, Uptown has developed a streetscape program that differentiates it from other communities through architectural wayfinding systems, lighting, beautiful landscaping, all to create a unique sense of place. John has also secured funding for and executed a $235 million capital improvement program to improve accessibility, including infrastructure development on our beloved Post Oak Boulevard. And he has led the charge in innovation by realizing Houston's first bus rapid transit system that launched this fall. I could go on and on about his good work, but I want to give a few special guests an opportunity to say some things about John.
Hey, this is Jamie Roots, president with your Houston Texans, and it gives me great pleasure today to visit with you to congratulate my friend John Breeding on becoming the 2020 Scenic Visionary from Scenic Houston. John, the work that you've done along Post Oak Boulevard and at Uptown has been nothing short of transformational. The economic benefits as well as the quality of life that comes from cultural assets like this are going to live on for decades to come, and we have you to thank for making it a reality.
Hi, John. You, I believe, follow these maxims. Live with intention, walk to the edge, listen hard, practice well, laugh, choose with no regret, continue to learn, appreciate your friends, do what you love, enjoy life with abandon. Live as if this is all there is. It is, John, a life you are living well, and for us, it is a community well served by you.
John, it has been a pleasure and an honor to work both for you and with you. Thank you for sharing your vision and showing all of us just how beautiful infrastructure can really be.
And John, as a Houstonian, I am so grateful for your hard work over the past 1/3 of a century. And what has happened in the Uptown area because of your vision is nothing short of a miracle. Thank you.
John, thank you for all that you've done for our community and for always being a champion for Houston.
Congratulations, my friend.
What a great testament to one of Houston's greatest scenic visionaries. Please join me now in congratulating John Breeding, Scenic Houston's 2020 Scenic Visionary. I mean, how do you present an award in the COVID era? We thought about, hazmat suits like the Emmys, but I think we're just going to go with the antibacterial wipe, socially distant presentation, and we'll just leave that here for John.
George, thank you very much. I am deeply honored to accept this award this evening. I've always believed in the mission of Scenic Houston, of making our city more visually appealing. I've had the good fortune of working with organizations that have focused on that all my life. In fact, I've had mentors on my boards of directors who have not only shaped my career, but shaped me individually. People who have passed, like Bill Miller, Martin Dobrobner, and Ed Wolf. Tonight, we celebrate their legacy. I've also had the great fortune of working with people like Louis Sklar and Raymond Brockstein as they've given me insight and guidance on the design and planning for Uptown Houston. And I'm working now with a new generation of leaders of Steve Lerner and Kendall Miller. I've had a wonderful time over the years working with a very dedicated and creative staff whose sole purpose has been to make our city better. I also want to thank an incredible staff at Uptown Houston who have been with me for years, who are dedicated, creative, and very thoughtful and concerned. My wife, Pam, and our blended families have kept me grounded as I have gone through a somewhat controversial profession at times. And I thank them for what they have contributed. I've been a student and I've had teachers. Perhaps the most significant teachers were my father. My father was a member of the greatest generation. That generation lived through the Great Depression and through World War II. He returned from the Marine Corps to assume his role in our community as a husband, a father, and a farmer. He took on leadership roles in the community. He served on the school board and was president of the school board as he led our school district through integration. He helped establish a rural water system, and he also did many other things. By his example, I saw and I learned that all of us are responsible for building community, that we need to have clear eyes to look to what our communities need and then work together to solve those issues. Whether it's Scenic Houston or the boards of directors of Uptown, I've had the opportunity to work with people who are dedicated with building better community. And I am very thankful that I personally had an opportunity to contribute. And I thank Scenic Houston again for this award.
Thank you for those thoughtful words, John, and congratulations again for this year's 2020 Scenic Visionary Award.
Thanks also to all of our sponsors. We are extremely grateful to you.
I'm saving the best for last. Thank you to our incredible board of directors, especially you, Cook. I think this evening went really well, don't you?
I agree, it did. It was a great night.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to our event. That's it for our program. We hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.